Geocachomaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Well, welcome to the 302nd, Daryl, I wanted to say 200th, 302nd episode of GeoGearHeads.
You're trying to time travel, huh?
I'm trying to time travel. Well, you know how many episodes we said 200? It was like 100 episodes. It's hard to change to get to that next level, but we made it to 302.
So it's like changing the year?
Exactly.
But it's even harder because it's almost 2 years of shows.
Yeah. I'm still right in 2016. I'll get it right before the end of the year.
At this point, I'm just confused as to what year it actually is.
That's true.
But it's definitely not 2017.
I don't think it is.
It's either 2018 or 2016. We're just trying to skip 2017.
Oh, well, Daryl, thank you for letting me come back on the show after doing a military coup last week and bringing in the Caching in the Northwest crew to take over.
That was a lot of fun. I have to admit, we listened to that on the drive around Rome, Georgia, as we're doing the going caching caches. And we got a kick out of it.
Oh, good. Yeah, we had fun. You know, we're just a couple of guys that enjoy each other's company. And, you know, sometimes we even talk about geocaching.
And sometimes, not often, but sometimes you even go geocaching.
Yeah, sometimes we can. In fact, I'm going with one of them this weekend on an epic geocaching adventure.
An epic geocaching adventure. Not a regular one.
No. Or is it an epoch? That's time.
Yes. Wrong.
Okay.
Wrong thing. Okay. But let's get to our actual topic for this evening, which is not geocaching. We're going to be talking about the Traipse app, which is not geocaching. It's like a tour app. So we have Patient Rock, which most of you will remember. Welcome back to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
And Darren Smith, who's among the Traipse team. So thanks for joining us.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So why don't we let you, Patient Rock, give us the quick description of what Traipse is?
I'll probably leave the bulk of that to Darren because he's so good at it. But essentially, being on this show got me a job, essentially. A buddy of mine knows...
Are we an employment agency as well as the premier geocaching podcast?
Your 10% check is in the mail.
Yes.
300 start to pay off.
I'm not paying him that much either, so sorry.
I sent it by pigeon. Yeah, a buddy of mine. He listens to the podcast. He knew Darren. He knows me, and he connected us. And Darren and I got to talking. Darren started this geolocation app that is primarily based in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. And I adore all things geolocation. And so I was like, how can I help? So Darren, why don't you tell everybody your elevator pitch?
Sure. So Traipse is designed to help people experience primarily historic business districts in a new and exciting way. The app leads people to a series of stops, which can be either sites, other points of interest, as well as locally owned businesses. And each place that the user goes, there's a puzzle for them to solve. And it's a puzzle that is that requires them to be at that location. So it's often something based on signs or plaques or what have you, things that are in the quasi-permanent built environment. And when the user solves the puzzle, if it's a puzzle at a shop, they often get some kind of discount or promotional item from the shop. So it's a really fun way for people to get to know an area if they're a tourist, but also we hear from people who try Traipse that live in the places where Traipse is active, who say things like, this showed me things that I didn't even know were there, which we love to hear. So it's really about, like I said, letting people explore, and also at the same time promoting that kind of local level economy and knowledge of local history.
Yeah, and Patient Rock, you were saying earlier that it is right now based out of the Shenandoah Valley. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's not a whole lot that any of us can do outside of that area, since there's no
Not yet.
tours yet. Now, what do you call them? Are they called tours? Or are they called cartridges, or what?
So that's actually an interesting question, because there are trademark issues around that. We would love to just call them Traipses, but I suspect that the Patent and Trademark Office will not look kindly on that, because they don't like you trying to sort of take over an actual English word. So we just call them Traipse Tours. But you can use the app a couple different ways. You can use the app to take tours. You can also just pop open the map and see all of the pins, like pins for all of the Traipse stops, and just kind of pick and choose. Or you can go into a store, notice that they have a Traipse sticker in the window, and be like, oh, I want to do the puzzle for this location, and you can just do that one. So there are different ways that you can use it. We also process of developing the functionality that will let people build their own itineraries, which may generated content, which we also are working on, but this is specifically about letting people tell the app what they're interested in seeing and when they might be traipsing, and the app will build for them an itinerary of the stops that are in the database and turn that into a Traipse. So there I go, calling it Traipse again. But but hopefully nobody from the PTO is listening and about to bust in. But yeah, so we definitely, at first it was just tours, and we found that people were walking down the street and wanting to go into a store and knowing that that store was a Traipse stop, but it wasn't on the tour that they were doing. And so it was hard for them to figure out how to actually do the puzzle for that. And so we redid things so that people can use it in different ways based on what kind of experience they're looking for.
Well,
So, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, one of the things that really kind of intrigued me when Patient Rock brought this to our attention is this is kind of what I was looking for when I got into geocaching and how I found geocaching. But I was looking for a way to create a tour, and this is, you can't do it yet, but this sounds like it might be the platform to allow for that in the future. Yeah.
We definitely want to keep the experience within sort of a certain parameters, so that people know if they're doing a Traipse tour, they know what they're getting. So we will have some editing role in letting people put their own content up, and we will identify it as user-generated content in the app. But basically, it just needs to be a gamified tour. And we have limitations on kind of which types of businesses can be included and that sort of thing. But we're still working through how all that will be structured with user-generated content, but it's something that we envision rolling out sometime early next year.
Nice.
That's when I came on, that's kind of like one of the most fun parts for me, is being kind of a mega fan of this sort of thing, kind of seeing it start. I mean, Traipse has been around for a bit, but kind of seeing the kind of the growth of it and all the things that you just don't even think about, like the trademarking, and we just launched a big update and all the thought that has to go into that, and then seeing everyone break your thing, and like, it was really fascinating to kind of see that from the other side for the first time.
Sure.
And you've been very helpful in kind of helping us know some of the pitfalls that other geolocation games and platforms have faced as they've evolved, and in some cases come and gone, to help us really focus on the best possible experience for our users, which we hope that we're providing.
Nice. So on average, how long is an individual tour? Distance?
Sure. So I would say on average they're about 90 minutes long and would cover a distance of between a half mile and a mile.
That's very doable. That's a nice afternoon or an evening to get out and explore the city. Mm-hmm.
And there's no time incentive in terms of the scoring system. So there's no reason why you can't, spend a while in one of the stores that it takes you to, or, read the full interpretive sign, historical marker when you get to a place, even after you've solved the puzzle. So you can really do it at your own leisure. We have found actually that can be a hindrance in some ways, because people, if they haven't done this before, is an open-ended thing, and it makes them a little reluctant to commit to doing it. So we try to have some estimates for them. For each tour, we have an estimated time and a number of stops, but some people would do it in an hour, some people would do it in 3 hours. So it's hard for us to kind of capture the experience for people before they really do it.
Well, sure. And is there any reward for completing the entire tour? We know there's a reward, like a discount or something like that at each location.
Right. There are in some cases. So each tour has what we call a bonus puzzle, for which you unlock clues as you complete each stop along the tour. Often it'll be something like a scrambled word, and each stop you complete, you reveal another letter in the word, and then you have to unscramble it. Although we also, in one instance, actually placed a cache in a municipal park here in Stanton, and the bonus puzzle are all clues to the location of that. And so finding that is the final, the way to complete the tour. And in some cases, including that one, for instance, we have then a way for people, if they find it, it gives them instructions or a hyperlink to an online form that they can fill out to be entered into, in that case, a quarterly prize drawing. And we have given out things like Traipse t-shirts, but also gift cards that can be used at downtown retailers, that kind of thing. So it provides that little extra incentive for people to want to complete an entire tour.
So of course, when I signed on, that was the first one I went after, because the moment he said there was a geocache at the end, so I was like, I'm sorry, what? How fast can I do this one?
Yeah.
Nice. So where did the idea come from?
So it came from a couple different sources. The main one was an event that took place in DC for about, I think, 8 or 9 years running, called the Washington Post Hunt. And is the event that was held once a year on a Sunday afternoon. And it was created by Dave Barry and Gene Weingarten. If you're familiar with Dave Barry, the humorist, and he and Gene have like similar zany senses of humor. So they would create these puzzles around kind of a 10 block by 10 block area downtown that would involve some kind of setup. They weren't, they had to actually prepare them. In some cases, it was a stage where people would be acting out a scene over and over again, and you had to watch and figure out what they were conveying as an answer via this scene. The answer to every puzzle is always a number. And then in the Sunday magazine for that week, they would have a set of maybe 200 clues, each with a number, and only 5 of those clues would actually be real. And so you would solve one of those puzzles and tie it to the correct clue, and then at 3 o'clock they would give another clue from the stage that would allow you to tie those 5 clues together and figure out what they called the end game. I did that. I think I did that every year they had it. This year was the first year that they did not in a long time. Unfortunately, the new ownership at the Post has been not as friendly to those sorts of things, but started in maybe, and the team that I was on won 3rd place that first year, and we won a trip to Florida from it.
What?
Yeah, I know. The prizes actually got less lucrative in subsequent years. So we were lucky to do it when we did, and also, like, I've not been anywhere close to placing in subsequent years because, like, after that first year, 2 or 3 times as many people started doing it, so it became a lot more competitive. But it was a lot of fun, and I saw the thousands of people doing this, and families, kids, enjoying themselves with this kind of activity, and it really came from not wanting to wait another year to do it again, and thinking to myself, is there a way that an experience like this can be created to where people can do it anytime and make puzzles out of things that are always there? And then as an urban planner, by training, I then started thinking, is there a way to use that to promote local businesses and kind of help people appreciate the sorts of places that are kind of dense with history and cultural things of cultural interest, and locally owned businesses. So that's really where the idea came from. I had it all the way back in 2008, and it took a long time for me to both work up the nerve and courage to actually invest in the business and get somebody to code the app. But I also think it took a while. Like, the technology wouldn't have been as widespread at that point for it to work the way it's working now.
Nice. Well, Darren, you've hinted a little bit at, what it takes to get this business up off the ground. I mean, this is a brand new business. It, developing an app with geolocation basis. What all is involved?
More than I ever imagined.
I can only
the things I deal with, the things I deal with every day, from legal issues to accounting issues to human resources issues. I'm
a real pain in the butt. So
Yeah. He's breaks every rule in the non-existent employee handbook.
Patient rock is the reason employee handbooks are written.
Yeah. It just, and everything just, we even had an instance of this today. We were talking with somebody here in Stanton who may do some PR work for us, and everything starting a business is a chicken egg problem. Where it feels like you have to do A in order to do B, and you have to do B in order to do C, and you have to do C in order to do A. And every day you just try to push each of those balls forward a little bit, and sometimes you have real breakthroughs and exciting things happen, but a lot of times it's just a slog. But I've got now, including present company and also a couple full-time employees who do both content development, social media stuff, and business development.
That's actually a pretty good sized team for what's essentially a startup app.
Yeah, and we didn't get there until just recently. We weren't at that level until just this past July. And we just completed a fundraising round that enabled us both to move on to version 2 of the app, which we just released a couple weeks ago. And also we've got further software development, as I mentioned earlier, going on that funding has allowed us to do. But it also allowed me to staff up to start to make this business more than just me. And it's still in a phase where I'm figuring out how to distribute responsibilities and work. That's where we're at, and it's starting. For now, it's still insane, but it's starting to maybe get a little more sane.
And you had mentioned earlier that there were some like geolocation game kind of problems that you hadn't anticipated. Are there any of those that come to mind that you can share?
Well, so one big one was that, and I don't. This gets into a little bit of kind of database modeling, data modeling, but have the way the app was initially built. Each location, each Traipse stop had a puzzle, but the puzzle was tied to a specific tour. So if we wanted to include the same stop on multiple tours, we had to duplicate it in the database, which caused all kinds of issues. And it took us a while then to kind of move away from that. We had to undo a lot of things to move away from that. Austin, do you think of any other?
Yeah, I mean, even like
that you've seen.
So a couple weeks ago, Stanton, Virginia had a big Harry Potter festival with a few thousand people. It was far more people than, it was the first time I've been, but it was way more people than I was expecting. It was very cool to see. And so Traipse was a big partner in that, in setting up a bunch of Harry Potter themed scavenger hunts around the area. It was like a Horcrux hunt and a Fantastic Beasts hunt where you had to go to different businesses and find, little puzzles that we had put out. It was really interesting to see your puzzles working or not working in real time. So Darren and one of our coworkers, Allison, had set up all these puzzles, and people would come to the table and be like, "I don't know where this is," and then we'd have, Darren would have to run back to the Traipse office and like quickly change it to kind of make more sense. To we got enough feedback to be like, okay, clearly people are not understanding what we're putting down, so we need to do that. And that was really cool to see, just because like you're never going to get that kind of user feedback in that real time.
Yeah. And
so it was interesting just from a puzzle design perspective about understanding your user and it's for the geocache. These essentially are a bunch of like virtual geocaches where you're primarily looking for things on the spot that will answer a question of some kind, except it's all within the app. And how do you design a fun puzzle that's challenging, but that's not going to scare off somebody who's just looking to tour a city? It was a really interesting balance live.
Yeah.
Well, and these are supposed to be like smaller puzzles that are, like 5-10 minutes or so, I'm imagining, not the big, like hour-long challenging puzzle caches. It's just, right. This is one piece that they have to solve.
Yeah. And it is difficult because Traipse is something that people can use anytime. It has to be designed so that the app can verify if the user is correct. And one of the most frustrating things from a user's perspective is to think you have the correct answer and maybe actually have the correct answer, but you're not inputting it in a way that the app recognizes it as the correct answer. So we have to, in designing the puzzles and the questions, we have to make the inputs as simple as possible while still creating something that is challenging and fun to solve. And that, I would say, is there's definitely an art to that. We try to create for people what I call an aha moment, where when you solve the puzzle, you've solved the puzzle. It's not like, oh, maybe it's this or maybe it's this. It might take you a while to get there, but when you solve it, you've solved it, even without the app necessarily telling you that. Because that we want to make people feel smart. We don't want to make people feel stupid, and just to have a fun experience exploring a place.
Mm-hmm. How did you go about approaching the businesses to let you place a puzzle there? were they accepting of it, or were they a little standoffish? You'd mentioned that a couple of your early puzzles, it sounded like the employees didn't know that they
Yeah,
were there, but maybe their manager or owner did.
right, right. So the way our business model works is we have contracts with clients such as local tourism departments or local downtown business development associations, Main Street organizations, to implement Traipse in their. So it helps then to get them, like the initial communications that we have with businesses, we try to do through them so that they know that this is this is legit, and there's something behind this, and that somebody at least thinks that it would be helpful for their business to participate in it. It still requires some hand-holding, and I would say 25% of the business owners jump at it from the very beginning. They're like, oh yeah, this is cool. I get it. Sign me up. Percent are kind of wait and see. They might they might sign on, but they're kind of a little bit not quite sure what to make of it. And then another 25% are probably never going to do it because they just don't want to do anything different. So but that's still, we end up with 75% of the local businesses that way, and that's certainly enough for people to have a fun experience. And it also means that it's including the businesses run by people who are interested in kind of having fun interaction with their customers. So, but it is free for the businesses to participate as a Traipse stop. That isn't our revenue source. There are things that they can do within the Traipse system to like sponsor a tour or something like that, but where there would be a fee for that, but otherwise it's free for them to participate. And then as was mentioned before, we do things like festivals. So we were paid to do some special tours for the Harry Potter Festival here. Things like that is one of our other sources of revenue.
I really look at this and think a large trade show, this might be a good application for. Go around to these booths and find this information.
Yeah, there are some other apps that do that that are kind of focused on that conference trade show market. The one we were at in Pittsburgh had something like that. The conference of the National Main Street Center, there was a conference app, and you could go to different booths and they would each have a code that they would give you to put in the app to show that you had visited the booth. A lot of people kind of got into that. I sort of feel like it's a little boring just to go and ask somebody for a code to put in an app. What we've done for conferences is actually set up Traipse tours in the neighborhood around the conference venue to get people out exploring. And we find that can be a really neat aspect of a conference for people.
Yeah, so like when we went to a conference in Winchester, Virginia, and one of the tours we set up was a lunchtime tour. Just as you're on your lunch break, you can go explore restaurants, and that was actually handy to, just even for us to be like, where are we going to eat for lunch during this thing? And people were definitely using it.
And it had 3 or 4 like historic sites on it too, so people were. It wasn't just going to businesses. People were learning something and seeing things in the city, but also seeing where they might want to eat lunch. So it can work out really well. It has enough flexibility that it can be tailored to different purposes.
Yeah, the event thing definitely seems like a nice little niche to be in. But that's limited time stuff, so it's only good for the period of that event.
Right. Right. And Winchester is actually a good example. We developed that for an event, and then we were able to offer to Old Town Winchester, which is kind of a branch of the city tourism department, deal on making that permanent for them because we had already developed a lot of that content for the conference. And so we're actually launching what we call evergreen Traipse in Winchester tomorrow at their Oktoberfest event. So we're trying to, in ways like that, where we can put partners together or distribute, because in a lot of cases these cities don't have the budget maybe to do it totally on their own, but we can get creative. And we also are looking to move into larger cities in the near future, probably starting with DC.
So still nothing by me, so I can't try it out yet.
Not yet. We're in Winchester. Will be our 4th city in Virginia.
Listen, the Shenandoah Valley is very pretty at this time of year, so I highly recommend it.
I mean, it's so pretty they write songs about it.
It's true.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of a drive, and nowhere near enough time off work available.
Yeah.
Well, not after being down in Georgia.
No, not it. Yeah, I did the Georgia thing. So a little too much going on this year, and I really want to try to get to Geo Woodstock next year. So
totally
gotta save up that time now.
And we definitely have a very ambitious plan for spreading geographically and really getting user-generated content right, and in some cases client-generated content for the app will enable us to grow in that way. Well,
and I really like that idea of the content, user-generated content, because that's what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. But do you have any idea, because it is going to be really tough to get the people like me who haven't played any of these Traipse tours to understand how to do it? Do you have any plans to have like a tutorial or something?
We've already started creating kind of a guidebook on what makes for a good Traipse puzzle and a good Traipse tour. But the other thing that we will likely do, at least to start, is have kind of different tiers, achievement tiers, where people would unlock the ability to submit their own content once they have done a certain amount of traipsing. So it wouldn't necessarily be available to you to do in another place if you've never actually come and done it before. We may not end up sticking to that. I don't know, precisely because we want to be able to put stuff in the app even if you can't get to Virginia. But I think that we will be growing. Will come somewhere near you in not too long a time.
Well, it's kind of interesting, just having consumed a lot of these things of, what is that balance? And that's something that's, we've been discussing. So, geocaching, you can slap down a cache from day one, and that's often a problem. Where I've played other geolocation games, like there's one called the Silent History, where it's primarily like narrative driven, but there is a geolocation hook where users could contribute to this story. But in order to do so, you have to follow like a 2-page style guide. So nobody did that. So it's got to be somewhere in between those two things, so you don't get bad content, but you're not scaring people away.
Yeah.
Limax in the chat is saying that he's wondering if Traipse would be a good tool to do a tour of an old winery near him instead of Where I Go. Now, my first reaction seeing that is, if it's an old winery, I'm not sure it has enough space to be a full Traipse tour.
So we have actually talked with some people who have, like, for instance, there's an old farm north of here that also is a wedding venue and has a couple other interesting things to see on the farm. Like, people can walk around and see some different things. They have talked to us about creating a Traipse just on that site. There's also a historic campus here in Stanton that has been in disuse, that is gradually being redeveloped, and there's some talk it will include a hotel as well, and we may end up doing a Traipse tour just within that campus. So we're still figuring out ways to make it work, for instance, within a museum, where you may not have the same capability, and so the app would have to of a locational guide for users. But I definitely think that there are possibilities there for Traipse to be used in those types of settings.
Well, and you mentioned those museums. I could really see this being a valuable tool to some of these little, like, community museums where they have,
Mm-hmm.
5, 6 different buildings. And think of how
Yeah.
cool it would be to have the tour group, the school groups, go through and explore the history of these buildings on their own.
Yeah.
And
and a lot of people just aren't. Oh, go ahead.
Well, we did the show into this a little bit with the Harry Potter Festival, where those 2 big scavenger hunts actually were not specifically location based within the app. The puzzle was finding out which. So every store in just about every store in Stanton had been renamed a Harry Potter name, and so that's what a lot of the puzzle was figuring out, using your Harry Potter knowledge, what store we were referring to. So it's how do you. So we already had that kind of set up where there wasn't necessarily a location within the app that you were being brought to. You had to figure out what the location was.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of user interface in that regard.
Yeah. I was going to say something else, but I forget what it was.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sure it's poignant and witty.
Yes, always. Yeah, we're still definitely experimenting with a lot of things that we think the app can do. One of the things that I'll mention that we've got going on right now, also here in Stanton, we really use Stanton as our laboratory. We have a treasure hunt that we are doing in conjunction with the local community radio station. It's a low power FM station. We're within the I forget what it's called. It's like a radio quiet zone imposed by the government because of some different facilities, intelligence, military facilities in this area that stretches into West Virginia. So there are a lot of limitations on power for radio signals. Anyway, they also broadcast online, so it's neither here nor there. But what we did is we hid, again, kind of a cache of sorts on public land somewhere in Stanton or the surrounding area, so pretty much within Augusta County, Virginia. And the first person to find that wins a big prize package worth over $1,000 that we've had contributions from local businesses. We designed it to last between 4 to 6 weeks. And so clues are given out in cycles over the radio and then also by using the app. So if you complete a Traipse stop, along with the message that says, yay, you solved the puzzle, then it gives you a numbered clue for the treasure hunt. So that actually comes from what was the other inspiration for Traipse, which was in my hometown in Kansas. The local radio station there used to do a treasure hunt that was similar. It just wasn't app-based, obviously. There were just signs posted in restaurants and stores around town, and then they would give clues out over the radio. But it was a big deal. It was something that people looked forward to every year. And I thought it could be a way to get people using the app and a nice kind of, if it works well, that builds some buzz and and that we can also spread to our other Traipse cities as we go.
Nice. I like that idea.
Yeah, so we created this big spreadsheet of clues that was a little intense. It's like, how do we generate a bajillion clues so that, people can eventually figure out where this thing is hidden, but not too fast.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you want to keep the suspense going long enough, but not too long that people lose interest.
Exactly.
You want quick wins, but you don't want it too quick. You want to stretch it out and make it a little challenge. That's a difficulty right there.
It was.
Yeah.
So, is the final cache of prizes already hidden and in place?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not so it's not designed to kind of be a step-by-step thing, like clue 1 doesn't lead you to clue 2 to clue 3 to clue 4. It's more, all of the clues hint at some aspect of the location of it. A lot of the clues are more about where the treasure isn't as opposed to where the treasure is, so that people gradually kind of narrow it down.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's found, it's just like it has instructions on how to let us know that you found it and verify that you found the correct thing, and then claim your prize, which we'll then award at an event in mid-November.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, just some of the legal stuff around that was also interesting as well. Just how much, the pages of stuff that Darren's lawyer sent along of what we could say, what we can't, like just things about contests that I just would have never considered.
Yeah.
I simply can't imagine. I mean, just even doing a quick contest here on a podcast can get into legal issues. So, something like that's got to be. No, it's beyond me. That's why there are lawyers.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice. Now, is there any benefit to solving the puzzle after somebody else has found it? After the first person has found it? Other than the thrill
with the treasure hunt?
The treasure hunt, yeah.
No. Once it's found, it's pretty much over.
Darren will give you a gigantic hug.
Yeah.
Awkward, but okay.
Yeah. I mean,
listen,
it's definitely meant to, Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The thrill of the hunt.
Yeah. No, we'll be putting, like, once somebody finds it, we will put word out immediately that it has been found, so that people don't, I won't say waste their time, but don't,
spend the next 6 weeks
come to the right place and not find it there and then be upset. So.
Yeah.
So something like a push notification in the app that says, "Hey, this has been solved."
Yeah, and we'll put it on social media and all that kind of stuff too.
Nice.
Now, I was thinking if anyone has a festival or something like that they're working with, where they think Traipse would be a good addition, how would they get a hold of you guys and set that up?
Yeah, so we are very reachable. I think going to our website and using the contact form there is probably the easiest thing to do. That's just traipse.co. But happy to give out my email, which is just Darren, Darren @traipse.co. I think we also have a sales @traipse.co, but you don't need to bother with that. Anyway, so. Yeah, and that's a way too that we think we can spread geographically more quickly. If there's a festival in Ohio, come do it.
Awesome. See, I got to try to get some of the guys up here to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the lead time on putting together a tour?
It depends. Something for a festival like that. We might even try to do it all in one trip. But it probably would be something like 2 weeks to there, do initial groundwork and then go back and put it all in the database and then have a few days to test it out beforehand. It really depends on what kind of thing it would be trying to do.
It's funny because being new to the team, it's way harder than I had, like I've been critical of various geolocation games over the years. And I've actually never been a huge fan of virtual geocaches. But actually, like being out there and doing it, it's like, oh yeah, this is actually not the easiest thing in the world. So, we like to spend some time kind of making sure that the puzzles are fun and actually make you feel good.
Well, that led in perfectly to a question I was thinking. As a geocacher, is there anything that you've learned about geocache creation from this?
Just
put you on the spot.
Actually, so I've been putting out a lot more puzzle caches lately because of it. Because I'm always, especially building a lot of these clues for this treasure hunt, I've come across a lot of like weird ciphers and that sort of thing that just wouldn't work with Traipse, but then like, oh man, that would make for an amazing puzzle cache, that sort of thing. And just kind of thinking in different ways. It's so much different when as a creator as opposed to a finder. It's been kind of an interesting twist in that way.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Is there any last item that we forgot to ask about?
Not that I think of.
No. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
It has been a pleasure, and we look forward to actually getting a chance to play.
Yeah. We'll come on out to Virginia and go do some traipsing.
See, that's going to take a little bit more work, but
so we'll host you at my family's farm, and we'll feed you real good.
There you go.
So now we have our next Giga event is at the farm.
Yeah.
If I get the badge, fine by me. just don't tell my parents.
Wow. I don't think that geocaching.com would award a Giga to a person, but if they would, man, how many people do we know are going to be going after that?
Yeah.
Oh, geocachers love challenges.
They do at that.
This is true.
Well, once again,
this
gentlemen,
has been a lot of fun. Thank you very much for having us on.
Oh, you're very welcome. Once again, thank you for spending your evening with us. We appreciate that. We know it's late back there. Now, if you're listening for the first time, you may not know that GeoGearHeads has wonderful episodes each and every week. In fact, just next week, we are talking another episode of road caching. We've done 14 or 13 of these. This is our 14th one. We have great topics on road caching. After that, we're talking with geocaching.com guidelines, because there was a recent change to those guidelines. November 2nd is another one of those great randomized shows. And November 9th, because we've had so much discussion about it, we're going to talk about batteries. You get a charge out of that one.
Check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Hoffenauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2017 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.